I'm revisiting the Book of I, first thing in the morning. I've always traveled in my sleep ever since I was a little kid. Oddly, I go back to the same places. Around the same people. So I, almost like dreams, but the stream of memory associated with the dream is almost like it's real, standing almost in a different dimension, crossing timelines and boundaries. I. So the cusp, they call it the cusp, the impact that the earth made, shattering life that was once held solidly on this planet and changed things indefinitely. The cusp. And so I, almost like all leaders back in those days, the word king came about that defined, signified, recognized leaders of those days. Leaders of various groups of people. They were all known as kings. And so, under I's authority, he was not known to his people as a king. He was known as I. A man with great knowledge, lots of authority. And he was a very wise man, for he looked out for his people first. And in and amongst all those people were his own blood, his mother, his father, his grandparents on both sides, his children born of himself. And so when other people got into discussions that would affect his people, he would carry himself forth, stepping away from his own people, and he would be the king of the Iroquois. Returning to his people, he would shed the skins of others, known as the kings, and return to himself, known as I. And so his son, born of himself, Hiawatha, a name given to him, his son was born without a name, as it was custom to the Iroquois. Names were earned during the lifetime. So at birth, they were not named by their parents. They were watched by their people, and the names later came about. But Hiawatha was different in many, many regards, because that name came from the animals. The animals named Hiawatha. That was his name. And so when the animals gave him, shedded the light of his name upon him, he took the name to his father and he asked permission to carry the name forward. And the permissions back then had to come not only from the father, but from of the people. And so the name was granted. And he carried it with pride. His learnings were with the animals, and he learned from the animals. He learned that they carried history, not only of themselves, but of this planet. And so he expanded his learnings through the animals using their streams of knowledge about this planet in themselves. And that's how he educated himself. And so, unlike as we see today with the Queen's passing, that the hands of the monarch are passed down to, rightfully so, her son, which is Charles. But under the Iroquoian structure, the quantity of blood was the overriding factor. So it didn't matter if you had married into some other group of people, that person carried less authority based on blood, the quantity of blood. Okay? So the cusp, at the point of the cusp, the rightful heir to the Iroquoian throne would have been handed down from I to his son, which is Hiawatha, but the cusp occurred. And Hiawatha was consumed by the knowledge that he had gained and the timing of the impact with the earth and the concern for the animals, their safety. So he was running two streams, one the concern for the animals, the other one concerns for his people, which he put that responsibility on his father's shoulders to protect the people while he was out there trying to protect the animals. And it occurred. The plan was to go into hibernation mode with the animals, locked down in hibernation mode. And so whatever life that was able to sustain the impact under hibernation mode, there had to be plans for, how would they step forward into the unknown? What would they eat? And so they planned accordingly. In that planning stage, there were these birds. They were like pterodactyls, but different. They were almost like pterodactyls, but fire-breathing dragons. And they were eyes line. So on the animal side of the fence, there were animals that Hiawatha managed, and there were animals that his father would manage through the knowledge that they both had gained about the history of the planet. And so these large birds, like, they were huge, and they were not a threat to the Iroquoian people. They worked collectively with them, and in a lot of respects, they provided transportation to and from different places. But they backed themselves up, and they survived. They survived the impact of the earth that shattered large portions of this planet, which was much larger than what it is today. It was the circumference of this planet was huge. And so a big portion of it's the cusp that cut away. So they survived. And in surviving, they were able to preserve life of other forms of themselves. And one of those life forms that they preserved while they were in hibernation mode was a bird that was similar in size to them, but the outside coating was not the same, for this bird had feathers. It was a golden bird. And they named that bird, that golden bird that sat with the ancient presence of a bird, the pterodactyls / dragons. They named that golden bird Pontiac. And so when people would come to I with concerns, he would make them do two things. Before you speak, you use your eyes and you look for your concern out in the future. And then when you bring it into him before I, you need to first make sure you have some line of code that you're going to be able to lock it all in. Because if it's something you're seeing in the future that's bad, that's going to hurt somebody, hurt large quantities of people, and you're not able to lock that in where the name is resonating somewhere, not in books filled with pages, but a single word, then it really has no true warnings for anyone. And you have to be able to decipher the code. And so that bird was named Pontiac because they saw in the future that there would be a king, an Inca king, and he would have a son by the name of Pontiac. And there was in the future, an Inca king that named his son, without the knowledge of the bird, he named his son Pontiac. And Pontiac, of the Inca king, used to do things that went against, almost like he was testing gravity at all times. And he would slide down using a single piece of wood, much like you see with skateboards today without the wheels. And he would slide down the banisters, mostly rocks, in the temple where his father would sit up high. He would skate all the way down and then jump off the board and stand in front of the people to carry his father's words from the top of the temple down to the people. And then he would walk up all the stairs to the top of the temple. That was Pontiac, the real Pontiac. He was an Inca son of a king, a known king. So kings and queens of today don't carry the quantity of blood that their ancestors once held. And that's why it's very hard for me to show disrespect for someone such as Putin, regardless of how people view his authority, because he is Russian, standing on Russian soil, protecting his people who are Russian. And to me, that's some heavy weight. That's historical weight. It signifies a lot to me. We should all protect our blood. to the fullest of all degrees. When you look at your children and your grandchildren, you instead of looking at them as a nuisance in your life because they're aggravating you or causing you some turbulence on any given day, look at them as that's your blood and find a way to protect that blood, because that's your history. I will always travel to I. Not that I have a choice. It just happens all on its own. And when I do, I carry the messages that I see with him and with his people forward. Because history does repeat itself. And if you don't like what you see, what occurred in the past, you have to change things now and in the future. And I don't like what I see. I don't like people being hurt on a regular basis. I don't like feeling the pain. I don't like to see animals. I have a deep connection with animals. I don't, my spot of anger would always be around animals and little children. Don't fuck with either one of them in front of me, because you'll hear it. I don't give a shit who you are. We're adults. We're supposed to protect those who can't protect themselves. And when I see video cameras, videotapes, these little snippets where cops have put their hands on children, full-grown adults carrying much heavier weight than that child, and you put your hands on them, I got a problem with that. Or when you taser animals or shoot a dog because you have some internal fear. That's your problem. You shouldn't have chosen that job. There's other jobs out there. If you're afraid of an animal in that type of position, you shouldn't have that position. A dog will automatically, by instinct, first protect their home. In that home, there are people that animal cares for. So if they bark or if they appear to be aggressive, they're only sending warning messages. This is my home. These are my people. If you're coming here to cause us harm, I'm letting you know right now that I'm here protecting them. That's all they do. It's a warning. There's no need to taser a dog. There's no need to shoot a dog if they're in their home. Just let them know. I'm not here to cause any harm. They're smart. They're very intelligent animals. There's a better way to handle that situation. And those types of videos I don't like to see. I, under the book of I, the impact and the cusp of the earth. May it hold some type of concern for you all, because the history and the timing of when that will occur again has been lost.